Assassin's Creed was the beginning of my video game obsession, and although I started by playing the second Assassin's Creed, there's a special place for the original in my heart after all these years. When it comes to Assassin's Creed, it's easy to point out that it looks and plays as outdated as it really is, and yeah, that's true. The mechanics can be annoying to work with and the game does feel clunky sometimes, but still, despite all of these grievances that I have, Assassin's Creed is still an amazing game nonetheless. When you think about Assassin's Creed, it's that iconic hood and hidden blade that really strike at the core of this franchise's aesthetics. It's something that made it so unique and different compared to other games. Additionally, Assassin's Creed crafted a brilliant story to build the rest of the franchise around. Sad to say that most of that story has been put aside now. But first, before we dive into why Assassin's Creed is still amazing, let's take a bit of time to talk about how Assassin's Creed became what it is today. Just a warning, I'm going to spoil a lot of the story of the first game. Assassin's Creed had life breathed into it at Ubisoft Montreal. Now, for context, Ubisoft Montreal was established in April 1997 and was a branch of Ubisoft's then worldwide growth. It was subsidized by the governments of Quebec and Canada to help create multimedia jobs in the city of Montreal. Nowadays, Montreal has become a major hub for artists of all mediums, and the city has heavily invested in creativity, with many video game studios establishing offices in the area. Ubisoft Montreal's original products were not really the massive AAA titles we see today. Originally, they created children's games, interestingly enough. However, that took a turn when, in 2002, Ubisoft Montreal released Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, and then in 2003, Ubisoft Montreal released Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time. A sequel to Prince of Persia had been in the works. The original concept for this sequel was to follow an assassin character instead of just the prince. For years, the team at Montreal worked to create this story about the player controlling an assassin character that would aid this prince. However, Ubisoft was not thrilled with the idea and wanted them to just essentially change the entire thing. The team realized the potential of releasing an entirely new IP with the release of the then next-gen consoles. Ubisoft's marketing team decided on the name Assassin's Creed. They then removed the prince from the game and focused solely on the assassin named Altair. Altair is a bit of an arrogant guy, and he's pretty ruthless as well. For Altair, getting the job done by any means necessary is pretty much the standard. Despite his dedication to the Creed and the Brotherhood, he creates a lot of issues. His decisions at the beginning of the game cost a fellow assassin's life, and another assassin named Malik's arm. He also randomly killed an old man, and then his actions later effectively led an enemy of the assassins named Robert de Sable to the Masyaf fortress, and pitted the assassins in a near war with the Templars. Altair was obviously punished for this, and he had to go through several sequences of killing different targets in order to regain his honor and his special weapons back. The story in Assassin's Creed was a relatively good one, and it had a very compelling plot. It was clear that Altair grew throughout the game in his wisdom and as a character. He was well written and interesting, and he had some great missions to go through. Assassin's Creed also had a modern component with a descendant of Altair named Desmond Miles. Desmond is being held by the Templars, and his memories are being pried into using a machine called the Animus. It seems pretty clear that Desmond's story is going to be very interesting throughout the next few games. Unfortunately though, Desmond's story is cut short later, but that's a tale for another time. Assassin's Creed takes place during the Crusades, but those are not the main focus of the title. The Crusades seem to serve as more of a backdrop to the story, but it's a very interesting backdrop. One of the best parts was being able to explore the different cities that were being held by different parties involved in the war, and how each city was different due to this war's impact on them. The cities explored were Jerusalem, Acre, Masyaf, and Damascus. Each city was recreated in one of the most detailed ways. Climbing up the different buildings and towers, you could tell that the developers put a lot of work into those small details. You could explore some pretty important landmarks in the region, which made the game's map feel much more immersive and unique. Though you couldn't go inside the majority of the buildings, there's not much that I can expect from a game made back in 2007. One of the biggest issues I had with Assassin's Creed wasn't its story or its details, but rather its repetitive nature. Assassin's Creed had several Templar targets to take out, and each one required Altair to go to a different city and seek information. Information could be sought out in a number of ways, including beating up people or pickpocketing messengers. After a while though, it got a bit boring to have to go through the same sequence. There wasn't a lot of innovation, and being sent back to the same city only to perform the same 3 information gathering actions felt bland. Sure, maybe there was a different informant mission here and there, but it was overall just the same thing over and over again. And there was also collecting flags. Did I ever catch them all? No, I did not. Parkour was pretty fun in this game, and if you knew how to hit the right buttons, you could do some really cool stuff. Stealth was also quite fun, but not as good as some of the later games. The hidden blade was good, but it could have been a bit easier to use in combat like it was in Assassin's Creed 2. Sometimes though, you easily fell into the whole character doesn't move where you want him to issues, and Altair would just decide to vault off into the expanse of the street while you're trying to climb up a building. There were limitations, and that's pretty obvious. Considering that this was the first in the franchise, the innovations probably weren't known to the designers at the time. There were limitations, and that's pretty obvious. Considering that this was the first in the franchise, there probably weren't many innovations that were seen later that were necessarily known to the designers at the time. They probably saw the features they had put in Assassin's Creed as being already amazing, and I mean they were, which makes Assassin's Creed 2007 an amazing stepping stone for the rest of the series. The thing that I felt was the strongest about Assassin's Creed was Altair and the way he grew through the game. Altair is still pretty arrogant by the end, but it seems like the arrogance is put aside in order to save the Brotherhood. The twist villain wasn't the least obvious of all time though. I had a feeling from the beginning that Al-Mualim was going to be evil just because he seemed that way, but the way the game played on that was interesting. Sure, it's pretty obvious to the player that Al-Mualim is a bit suspicious, but to Altair it's not clear. There's a bit of dramatic irony there from that. So when Altair does realize the truth by the end, it's really intense. The fight between them was very powerful and symbolic of the whole scenario. Altair had to fight against everything he knew and everyone he cared about. Al-Mualim's use of the apple to turn other assassins against Altair was pretty bitter to watch. But Altair's ability to grow as a person and make amends with the other people in the game was well done. His arc with Malik was very engaging, and it showed how by the end Malik held a strong level of respect for him. Overall, Assassin's Creed 2007 is one of my favorite games, and it really does hold up in 2022. Sure, it's not the most advanced Assassin's Creed game, but its simple charm is what makes it so amazing. Would I still play it in 2022? Most certainly. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to leave a like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another upload. Check out my military sci-fi series and my website in the description below. Symbiosis out.